Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is a council meeting to host a public meeting on matters requiring approvals under the Planning Act. Before we begin, members of the public are advised that for the purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the corporation of the city of St. Thomas before the bylaws are passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the Corporation of the City of St. Thomas to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Further, if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Corporation of the City of St. Thomas before the bylaws are passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Those wanting to be notified of the council's decision on any application should email customer service at customerservice@stthomas.ca, indicate which public meeting they wish to be notified on, and provide their name and address. For those that don't have access to a computer and wish to be notified, they should call customer service at 519-631-1680, extension 0, and provide the same information. Do any of the members of council have any disclosures of interest concerning any of the matters on the agenda? Seeing no, then I'll ask the clerk, Madam Clerk, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for these meetings?
Your worship, notice was provided in the St. Thomas Times Journal on Friday, June the 21st, 2024. And in accordance with council policies, notice was also mailed to property owners within 120 meters of each of the properties that are subject of tonight's public meetings.
Okay, and we have two public meetings tonight. Number one is Sandymount Subdivision 41041 Major Line. It's an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. I'll call that first meeting to order and advise the public of the following. The first public meeting is required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation in respect to the proposed official plan zoning bylaw amendment to permit a proposed residential development on lands known as Sandymount Subdivision 41041 Major Line. I'll introduce our Manager of Planning Services, Jim McComb, who will provide the background information on the proposal and present the draft bylaws.
Thank you, Your Worship. Apparently my video has been, I can't start my video, but I'm hoping everybody can hear me.
I won't say anything about how it's better not seeing you, Jim.
I appreciate that, Your Worship. Okay, so as noted in the preamble by the mayor, these applications, there's two in a row. They're actually both interrelated, and I'll explain more about that in a minute. It's dealing with what's going to be called in the future the Sandymount Development Area. And so the zoning, we've set it up so that it's consistent across the entire area. And this public meeting has to do only with the zoning and not the draft plan of subdivision. Under the Planning Act, public meetings are no longer required for the subdivision. But I do have just some opening comments about what the subdivision in general does entail. So in the screen in front of you, we have a key map that shows the two subdivision areas, one under the name Lacram and the other one under the name Landrise. So Lacram in purple and Landrise under the pinkish color. So this is a blow up of that map. And again, you can see the two subdivisions and how they are related. We have a central spine road, Street A, which will come up from Wellington and run all the way up to Major Line. And then each subdivision has its own local roads that will extend off of that. The development in total, now this is together with Landrise and Lacram, will have a total of about 316 single detached residential lots, about 72 semi-detached units, and the capacity within the three high density blocks for approximately 1,060 units. Now that's based on the maximum density permitted in the R5 zone. So we don't know what the actual build out for those blocks will be. That will come later on as the blocks are individually developed, and those developments may require further refinement of the zoning. So now in addition to the zoning amendment, there are official plan amendments, and the reason for the official plan amendments is simply to modify the boundary between the residential designation and the natural heritage designation. And this is based on the geotechnical work that was done as well as the environmental reports. So starting off with the Lacram subdivision, again, here we have on the screen a copy of the draft plan that has been submitted. Again, you have the main Street A running through some individual local roads. In this area here, we have the park and the stormwater block, and all of the valley lands will be placed into the open space or are in the open space designation, will be zoned open space. So there'll be no development within those ravine areas. Lots will not extend into them. So starting off with the official plan amendment for 41041 Major Line. The introductory statement states that all of this part of the document entitled Part B constitutes amendment number 111 to the official plan for St. Thomas. And under the details, item 1 says that Schedule A land use plan to the official plan of the City of St. Thomas is amended by designating the lands numbered 111 as residential. So again, on the inset here, you see the areas in heavy solid line, and these represent largely areas that are they're old washouts, farm washouts that are being filled in. They're currently designated for natural heritage, but are going to be redesignated. They'll be filled in and redesignated for residential use. And under Part 3 of the amendment, the implementation and interpretation of this amendment shall be in accordance with the respective policies of the City of St. Thomas official plan. So in addition to the official plan amendment, there is a zoning bylaw amendment, and Part 1 of that. And there's quite a few changes here, so bear with me as we go through this. It states that zoning map 46 as amended is further amended by zoning the lands shown outlined in heavy solid lines on Schedule A here too is R3A-51, and that will be the single detached dwelling lots. By zoning the land shown in hatched on Schedule A here too is R3A-52, and we'll get to the details on the R352 in a minute. By zoning the land shown cross-hatched on Schedule A here too is R3A-53. By zoning the land shown in dashed hatch on Schedule A here too is R3A-54. By zoning the land shown shaded on Schedule A here too is R5-49, that's the high density blocks. And by zoning the land shown in heavy solid line and shaded on Schedule A here too as OS-17, and that'll be the park and the stormwater block. This schedule shall be added to and form part of bylaw 50-88 as amended, shall be known as special zoning map 46-2 to bylaw 50-88. So here is special zoning map 46-2. And as I indicated, this large white area that's only encased in the heavy solid line, this is the where all the single detached dwellings are going. The R3A-52 represents some of the townhouse blocks, and there are two types of townhouse blocks, the R3A-52 and the R3A-53. And in some of those, they have a maximum of 4 units, and the others, they have a maximum of 6 units. And that's the only difference between the two. The R5-49 blocks are these two adjacent to Major Line, and that will be where the higher density development will be. And the OS-17 showing the shaded area, the light shaded area, and that represents the area where the stormwater block and the park is. Going on to the second part of the amendment. Second part states that bylaw 58 as amended is further amended by adding paragraph 7A.5.51. The area affected is the R3A-51, as was shown on the map part. This is the single detached dwelling lots. And the applicable provisions are generally the R3A zone. So the standards of the R3A zone will apply to all of these lots. Part 3 states that bylaw 50-88 is further amended by adding to subsection 7A5 a new paragraph. This is 7A.5.52. It is the R3A-52, as was shown in the special map part. The applicable provisions are those provisions of the R3A zone, but there's a special setback requirement. Now we have some of the single detached residential lots in the subdivision do encroach slightly within the erosion hazard limit. And so we've had to put in a special provision for setbacks here. Normally, we would not allow the lots to encroach in the erosion hazard limit. The big difference here is if we were to cut the lots off at the erosion hazard limit, there's going to be a few meter wide strip at the back of those that will essentially be a little no man's land. Normally, that area would be part of the ravine system that would go into public ownership. However, in this case, the hillside of the ravine and behind is actually in private ownership. So what we're doing as an alternative here is keeping that erosion hazard limit in, but putting in a special provision that says that no building or structure other than a fence is permitted within 6 meters of the rear lot line. Going on to part 4 of the amendment, it further amends bylaw 50-88 by adding a new paragraph 78.5.53. The area affected is the R3A-53, as was shown in the special map part. And this has to do with townhouse dwellings. The maximum number of dwelling units is 4 per lot. And as we have done with street towns, we have a special provision for deck projections stating that notwithstanding the provisions of subsection 4.2.2, an unenclosed deck may project a maximum of 4 meters into a required rear yard. The exceptions deal with the standard provisions of the zone as they would apply to townhomes that are being otherwise replaced by the special provisions. Next, we have the zone for the 6-lot townhomes. It will be the R3A-54 zone, as was shown in the special zoning map part. Again, the maximum number of dwelling units for these ones will be 6 per lot. And again, we have the special provision for the deck projections into the required rear yard. And again, the exceptions dealing with the standard provisions of the bylaw that are otherwise being dealt with by these special provisions. Going on to the blocks for the higher density development. This is part 6. It further amends the bylaw by introducing a new paragraph 9549. The area affected is the R5-49. And the part B states that the standard provisions essentially of the R5 zone will apply to this zone. Finally, in part 7, it introduces again a new special zone, subsection 23.4.17. The area affected is the OS-17 as shown on the special zoning map 46.2. And again, the standard provisions of the open space zone will be applied to this special zone. And finally, under part 8, in anticipation of the eventual consolidation of the bylaw, Schedule B to the bylaw is hereby adopted, being zoning map 46 to bylaw 50-88, to include all the changes that have been made to such a zoning map by all amendments to date, including this amendment. And so here is that zoning map 56 amended to incorporate all the changes as per this particular amendment. And that is the draft of this particular amendment, Your Worship, if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. McComb. Madam Clerk, have you received any written submissions on the proposed changes in public meeting 1?
Your Worship, we have received one written submission, and it's actually for both parcels from James and Maureen Dodd of 9294 Sunset Drive. And they had expressed concerns relating to trespassing and dumping over onto their property, excavation, grading and fill along the top of slope, fill of the washout areas, and impacts to their well.
Okay. I'll ask council first. Do you have any questions? Councillor Peters, then Councillor Wookie.
Thanks, Your Worship. My questions would pertain particularly to the written letter, very detailed and well thought out letter by the Dodd family and their concerns of the impact that this is suddenly going to have, where they've lived in a rural setting at the bottom of Sandymount Hill for 100+ years, and now to suddenly have a big new neighbor. So Jim, where do the concerns of the Dodds get addressed? Is it at this level? Is that at a site plan committee time? Because I think some of the issues that they raise are good, valid points.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Peters. Very good question. We received that correspondence today. Staff have been going through it. The comments really can't be addressed through this particular zoning amendment, but we are planning on forwarding them. Number one, we'll be forwarding them to the developers consultants to have them address some of the matters that were raised by the Dodds. And also staff will be given consideration to some of those comments as part of the draft plan approval process. And so there may be things that we can include in the conditions to draft plan approval to address things like, the fencing and that sort of thing. So it will be addressed. It's a little early because we've just received the correspondence, but rest assured that staff will be looking toward either the developer to address the comments that have been made, or we will be looking to see how we can address them through the draft plan of subdivision approval process.
Councillor Wookie?
Thanks, Your Worship. Jim, I got a couple of questions about I forget what you called it exactly, but the erosion protection or erosion risk zone, okay? Now, you said that no buildings will be allowed on that section of that property. I appreciate that. My concern would be if somebody, and I know it might be a long way out, but somebody put some O-ring in to drain their yard, and they're now going to drain, like especially with the rain today, they're going to drain back into that area. It's going to go over the hill. So aside from buildings, is there anything in the regulations regarding drainage or redirection of overland water in that regard? And then I have one other question. Thank you.
Mr. McCoo?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Wookie. Well, there's a couple of things that are going to happen throughout the development phase of this subdivision. One of the things is each lot as it gets developed requires a lot grading and drainage plan to be approved by the city. And so if there's any changes that are made to the grades and that are in violation of the approved plan, the city can go in and make changes to rectify that. The other thing is too, it's part of the regulated area of the Conservation Authority. So people can't just go ahead and start making changes and doing drainage and making grading changes without getting the appropriate permits. And so there are two avenues there that we understand that, there's always, whenever we're dealing with these properties that abut the riverine systems, there's always going to be some potential enforcement issues for the city or other regulatory agencies. And it's no different in this particular case.
Councillor Wookie, you had a second?
Thank you. I want to just circle back to that question, Jim, because I'm not concerned about the homeowners changing the grading. I'm concerned about 40 feet of O-ring going back, spilling just over that erosion area and actually causing more erosion is kind of my concern, just so you're aware of that aspect of it. Now, in terms of how will it be communicated to the home builders and hence the buyers that they are not allowed to put a shed out in that back area? I assume it's on title, but a lot of times people might not read that or might not know, or the second owner doesn't know. And I think that's when we start getting a lot of things built in areas where they shouldn't be built. Generally speaking, how is that managed in terms of communicating to homeowners what they're allowed to do beyond what's on title? Thanks.
Mr. McCoo?
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, through you to Councillor Wookie. Yeah, we will be looking and talking with the developers as to mechanisms that can be put in place to ensure that purchasers are aware that they've got an area at the back of that lot that they can't put buildings and structures onto. And it does become a bit of, I'll be honest, it does become a bit of an enforcement issue potentially down the road as properties do change hands. But again, this area is also under the somewhat under the regulatory control of the Conservation Authority. So I mean, when people back onto these ravines, it's not a perfect situation. We do occasionally experience situations where people will, try to do things in the back, maybe put buildings where they don't belong. But we deal with that not only with these ravine situations, but on any lot. I mean, there's the aspect of the standard zoning setbacks that people need to be aware of, whether it's for swimming pools or sheds or whatever it is. So the general message to the public is before you go doing anything in your rear yard, you should be checking with the city to make sure that you are in fact in compliance with the bylaws. We know it doesn't happen, so there'll always be compliance issues for the city to deal with. But in many respects, it's no different than any other lot anywhere else.
Thank you.
Mr. Pompili, did you have an addition?
Yeah, just in addition to that, Jim nailed it with that response, but other tools that we have available to us to help in those, because these are unique situations. And what I've done in other jurisdictions is we've put conditions in the subdivision agreement that require that those lots that are affected have some sort of homeowner information package prepared for those lots so that the purchaser is aware that there are restrictions beyond a certain point in terms of what they can and cannot do, like dumping and building of sheds or other structures or any type of encroachment activities.
Go ahead, sure.
Thanks. And to both of you, Mike, the concern I still have is like somebody, like, because I have a cottage that backs onto KCCA land, like there's people that are going to want to discharge their water to that area, that specifically that area right on top of this. And I have concerns for the family who owns the property at the bottom regarding that. So that's aside from the buildings, I'm hoping that somewhere in that package, it's like, whatever the regulations are, don't be running your O-ring to that property. Like you have to discharge your water on your property, not on that setback. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Just again, circling back to the letter that we received, who will be responding to the Dodds? Will it be the planning department or will it be the city clerk in terms of, they've asked a number of questions. I know it's early in the process, but they'll want to hear from somebody. I'm just wondering when it will happen and who will be doing it.
I believe they're on here with us tonight also, but Mr. McComb, you can answer your responsibility to collect the answer and get it back.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, the planning department will be coordinating the response to the Dodds. As I indicated, we believe that some of the issues that have been raised by the Dodds need to be reviewed and addressed by the consultants for the applicants. The details on how they'll be carrying out, for example, the filling of the washouts and that sort of thing. So that information should be coming from their consultants. Other aspects, the staff can give some consideration to. But at the end of the day, we will be providing a fulsome response to the Dodds on their questions. I have been in touch with Mr. Dodd quite a bit on this particular application over the last few years. And I must thank him for his patience. There's been quite a bit of a delay in getting these applications brought forward. So, Mr. Dodds, we really appreciate your patience in that regard. And we will be endeavoring to make sure that all of your questions and comments get addressed.
Great, Councillor Clark.
And the other question I had was just, I can see where the park is situated. I was just wondering at this point in the process, we talked about where the trail system might be going through the project.
Mr. McComb, addition to that?
Yeah, thank you again, Your Worship, through to Councillor Clark. The subdivisions feature a number of opportunities for active transportation. There'll be the sidewalks that run along the roads. There is a trail that's being proposed to run along, I don't know if you see my cursor, but along the ravine system on the north side. Basically, it's going to run from the north end all the way down to the south end. There's be a long corridor system that runs along the top of that ravine, as well as the connections from there to the parkland itself, the park area, the active park area. There is, as part of a potential future for this development area, one of the applicants, the one we're dealing with right now, does own the woodlot in the northwest end. and has suggested that there may be opportunities for further trails through that woodlot at some point in the future.
Great. Counselor Herbert?
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to address some of the concerns about the impacts to their well. They've lived there for 38 years. They're on a 30-foot deep. It's not a deep well, it's a shallow well. And they've had problems with the contaminated water on their appliances, which the city recovered. But I note in the report, they're saying that typical wells on that area range from 100 to 250 feet deep. So they're not anticipating any properties to be impacted. Well, however, they're on a 30-foot well, so they're going to be impacted. Some problems there, and the suggestion that there will be in long term, there'll be a primary drinking water for Sunset is low, they're saying. They can always hook into the water line somewhere down the road, or they can dig deeper, it sounds like, go down to 100 to 200 feet. So if they're forced to do that to maintain solid water, drinkable water, who would pay the cost for that? Would they have to pay to go down 100, 200 feet because of the subdivision, or would they be able to hook into the water line without any cost? So I agree. I don't think the impact of the well has been specifically investigated. They're given two options: dig deeper or hook in, but they're not saying who would have to pay for it. I don't really think why they would have to pay for it themselves. But anyway, I just like a few comments on, has the impact of their well been specifically investigated? That would be my question to somebody. I'm not sure who would answer that.
Mr. McComb on the well?
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, we just received this correspondence today. In the correspondence, Mr. Dodd attributed some of those impacts to their well based on the installation of the pumping station along Wellington. It occurred around that time. So we would like again to get some comment from the Environmental Services Department, as well as from the developers consultants before we can provide a more wholesome response to that particular topic.
Well, but Mr. McCombs, they're having problems now. So, I mean, if they don't start digging down to 100 to the main vein, they're going to have problems as this subdivision is being built. I just think there should be a game plan for them to say, okay, we'll dig down 100, 200 feet, make sure you get good water, and we'll pay for it. Or somewhere in the line, we're going to hook you into the water main, the main city water line, and at really no cost to you, because it's not their fault the subdivision's being built beside them. They shouldn't have to pay X number of dollars to maintain a decent water supply. So as you're suggesting, some investigation can take place to find just out what the bottom lines are, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that they need good drinking water, and they've had it. And it's obviously, there's been a change since the subdivision is going in there. So thank you.
Okay. Further questions from council? Should more questions arise, please raise your hand. We'll now also open the floor to members of the public. If you are listening on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, please click the raised hand icon, then we can see that you'd like to speak. And if you've called into the meeting using a telephone, please dial *9. The questions will be taken in the order in which they come up. And when given the opportunity to speak, please make sure you provide your name and address for the clerk's record so that we can make sure we have that recorded. So now we'll go to any member of the public or any member of council. And I have Gary and Fran, and I see a hand up. So we will unmute you. You unmute yourself. And when you're unmuted and can speak, please let us know name and address. I see you're unmuted. Go ahead, Gary and Fran. I bet you're trying to speak to us. Okay, you're muted again, so try unmuting. Okay, you're unmuted. Give it a try. I can only suggest you yell louder. I don't have another suggestion beyond. And don't yell at me. I didn't do anything. Try one more time, muting and unmuting and seeing if we can get you back. Our crack tech support team is working on it very diligently. Okay, you're unmuted. Give it a try. Hello? I get nothing. So if it's okay with you, we're going to skip to the next one and see if we can see if it is working or it's the whole system. So Shumik P. You're up. Unmute yourself.
Hello.
Give us,
Yeah.
okay, we hear you fine. All right.
Just my question is,
Can I get your name and address, please?
Shamik Paragu. And the address is 9784 Sunset Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Road.
And your question?
Is there any tentative timelines when is the city service water and the sewer will be coming into that intersection, Major Line and Sunset? Because of this development?
Mr. McComb, did you get that?
Your worship, yes, I did. I believe the gentleman was asking, when will city services possibly get to the area, like the existing development along Sunset near Major Line? I mean, it would be the long-term intent that, yeah, that area will be serviced, but I don't believe that there is a timeline for that right now. Certainly we can't extend services over to that area until we get this particular subdivision service. So we'll get to that point first. I'm not sure if there's anybody from environmental service that is in attendance that could perhaps offer more, but right now I have no idea as to when those services could be extended.
I see Mr. Dealerbeek rushing to the microphone.
Sorry. What about the services for this subdivision, when that will be coming?
Kevin, do you have?
Through the mayor, we will take the question back and we'll get a response to Jim's in order to, so we'll just collect all the questions at this point and be able to
Okay.
review that to make sure, you know, whatever we do communicate is factual based.
Okay. Any further questions, sir?
Thank you, sir. No, I'm good.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. The next one I have live is Jim Dodd. So if you want to give that a try, Jim, and try unmuting yourself. You're up. I hear you. Name and address.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yes, the address is 9294 Sunset Drive, and basically, I think you guys have pretty well, I had a bit of a summary too, but I think you guys have kind of covered it, our questions pretty well right now, as far as the summary goes. And like you say, you'll have to have some extra time to go over that, those questions I had. So really, I don't have too much to say other than thanks for now.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dodd, for the detail in your response. It gives us a place to start, and Mr. McComb a place to start with answers and working with the developers. So
Okay.
thank you for being as detailed as you've been today.
Well, we try to be. Good way to start off.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to try and go back to Gary and Fran. If you could try unmuting and try again, we'll see if we've got sound coming from yours. Okay. gremlins are in the lines for Gary and Fran. Perhaps microphone issue or volume issue. Try Counselor Clark.
Do we have a cell phone number that people could use to phone in if things don't work?
Yes, because some people have joined us by phone, so I'll get the clerk to read that out for us and we'll try that way if we can.
Perhaps the deputy clerk has that handy.
In the interim, I'll go on to Greg. I see your hand up, Greg. Go ahead and give us a unmute and give us a try talking. Greg?
Hello. It's Greg Schmidt, 9592 Sunset Drive.
Great. And your
we-
question or comment tonight, Greg?
I have two questions. One has to do with the well question that Mr. Dodd has brought up. We also have a shallow well, 20 to 30 feet deep. And, listening to Mr. Dodd speak about his well, we also have concerns equal to that, and would like to have our well tested and make sure that there's no issues. We have a family of 5 with 3 young kids, and it's a big concern of ours. So we'd like to know what's going to go on, with issues with water. Secondly, the field that is next to us, would be east of us, is part of the Purple subdivision plan. And, we'd like to know if there's anything planned for that. We were initially told that one of the roads would be going through from the subdivision, the Lacram subdivision, past and down the field to Sunset Drive. Is there any truth to that as well?
Mr. McComb is bringing up the map here again. And Jim, the answer to the question and your cursor?
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe this may be the area that the gentleman is talking about.
Correct.
Yeah, we don't know at this time. I mean, it's just slated for future development. It is designated for residential use, but we have not seen a particular development plan for there. There is a local road on the draft plan for Lacram that does terminate at that point. But whether or not that will be extended through as a roadway or not, we don't know at this time. So
One of the things-
I'm sorry?
I do have a statement about the road. We are part of the old farmhouse, Lot 1. Lot 2 is our neighbor to our west or north. And Lot 3 would be, of the original homestead, would be that field. 9592 Sunset has an easement that's deeded to the property that cuts off that whole side of the field, 850 feet from the front to the back and 50 feet wide, which would run right down the side of that property line. So just so that everybody's aware, when planning is done, to check the easements that are registered with the land transfer people. Just a side note on that. We certainly don't really want a road running through there, but we understand there's some planning to be done.
Okay, thank you for the information and we'll record it and pay attention to it.
Thank you.
Anything else, Greg?
I believe that's everything.
Okay, and on the well piece, Mr. McComb has answered that question and we've got some research to do and I know that we'll be back to you on that one too. The next one I have is Severa Usman. If you can unmute and give us a try.
Hello, everyone. We are at 9668 Sunset Drive. It's a motel up on the Sunset Drive. And we've been following this for a long time, since 2019, when Area 1 got selected. And we were promised that we will be going to get the water servicing. for the existing properties. And today we really were hoping to get an answer, like the time frame for it. And but today this question has already been asked, and we've been told that we don't know yet. So it would be great if we could, get to know a timeline for the water servicing.
Well, I believe that Mr. McComb has answered that, and Kevin also, that we now know that that's a want. And as we continue on with the development of the site, the closer it gets to that, but I don't think anybody can give us an exact date today.
Oh, okay, like we're really hoping for like a timeline, like a year, 6 months, like anything that could, give us a hope that the water would be coming to the existing property soon. So maybe in a couple months, if we could get to know.
Well, all I can ask is staff to keep you posted as we move closer to it, but I'm not sure there's anyone who can give us a promise today on the date.
All right, that's all. But yeah, I just wanted to put it out that we really are looking forward for the water servicing. And yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. Should I try JJ? Try unmuting yourself. There you go. Give us a try on your conversation.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is JJ at 9701 Sunset Drive. I am also an owner of a motel, and I just wanted to ask in relation to a similar question in terms of servicing for water. I understand that first it's going to be Sandy Mount that is going to be serviced, and right now there is no plan to service Sunset Drive. I just wanted to understand the timelines for Sandy Mount or La Creme, like we have it up on the slide. What is the timeline for that neighborhood or that subdivision to be developed?
Mr. McComb, do you have a timeline on that? I know we're at the point where we're at the first step towards, so please. We have a guest speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I would hope that, the developers on both of these plans of subdivision have been very anxious to get going.
Right.
And I would think that as soon as draft plan approval is issued, they'll want to start getting on with the servicing. You'll likely see the services in Street A, which is that spine road that's going to come right up from Wellington through to Major Line. That'll be the first thing to get built, and services being brought right up there, all the trunk sanitary and water lines and that sort of thing. So I wouldn't hesitate to say it'd be ASAP, but we can't give you an exact date.
We've got another speaker at our podium, so let's see if he's got some information.
Through your worship, members of council, thank you, Jim, for the answer to that question as well. My name's Darren Lyle from CJDL, so we're the consulting engineers for both La Creme and Landrise's concurrent applications here. Jim is quite correct that ASAP is the answer to that question. Provided all goes smoothly in the last remaining steps of the planning applications, we're hoping to start earth grading on site early this fall, followed by underground servicing and building permits as soon as they can be issued by the building department. I did want to touch just briefly on the water issues or water concerns that have been raised. The investigation into the well for Mr. and Mrs. Dodd. So that was actually the first time that's been brought to our attention was the letter that was forwarded this afternoon by the planning office. From what I do understand, it was an impact that was the timing was quite concurrent with construction of the wet well. So it is good that that's been brought to our attention. So during there will be further investigation prior to construction, but during construction, we'll make sure that there's a contingency plan in place, like a temporary water source or something that can be available to them and the other landowner, Greg Schmidt, if need be. So thank you.
Thank you. And I like your timeline.
I
Further
did just,
questions? Do I have other hands up? Or JJ, did you have more?
I did, yeah. I just had one follow-up question, kind of based upon the responses that we've gotten. So as I was looking at the plan that's been put together, I saw that La Creme is in 3 phases, and there's additional locations there which are for high density housing. I'm just trying to understand, would the Sunset Drive being serviced for water, would that occur after the entire subdivision has completed, with the fact that there is currently no plan to service it? Am I understanding that correctly?
Mr. McComb?
Your worship, perhaps Mr. Lyle or Mr. DeLevy could speak to that question.
Please.
Through you, your worship, that's correct. The phasing plan that was submitted with the draft plan and corresponding zoning applications does remain current. As Jim mentioned earlier, phase 1 will include the entirety of Land Rises Holdings, and then at minimum the spine road within the La Creme subdivision. As we get closer to servicing, depending on market conditions, and there is a demand for lots in this area, the phase limits, the conversation is whether the phase limits will grow rather than shrink type of thing. So it may be that we do phase 1 and perhaps part of 2 or something all together. So that is still to be determined. It will be within phase 4 though, that the water main and services would be extended to Sunset.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you. Councillor Peters.
Thanks very much, worship. And it's been interesting to listen to the comments made, and I appreciate Kevin's comments and Jim's and the consultants about, starting to look at this. But I really think it's important to our environmental services department that we can start, I can remember when this area was annexed into the city in 1990, and 34 years ago when, this area was annexed in, and Pat Keenan sitting back there, who was one of the architects of it. So, here we are 34 years later, and I just want to make sure we do it right, because I don't want to solve a water problem and all of a sudden create a sewage problem, because now all those homes have a good, adequate, steady supply of water, and then starting to see that impact on septic systems,
right,
or holding tanks. So I look forward to seeing what Kevin and his team comes back with of what the concurrent plan is. And part of what I would hope you would come back with is what other development potential, if we were to do some of these things of extending water and sewer along Sunset, does that open up some, new potential lots out in the area as well too? So anyway, I just want to say to everyone that's commented, I think council's heard you loud and clear, and so is our staff. Thanks, your worship.
And I was going to say that too, Councillor Peters. We've heard about it tonight. Now it's in our wheelhouse too to talk about it. So that's great. Any other hands up? Do you want to try? Let's Gary and Fran.
Your worship, I did. If you want to try them again, I do have a telephone number, a meeting ID, and a passcode, unless they're able to get their volume to work on the computer.
Let's try unmuting and talking. If that doesn't work, we'll get you the cell. Give us a try. Nope, we're not hearing you.
Your worship, if they're able to get on, if I could just read the number for Gary and Fran to go on telephone, it's 1-778-907-2071. The meeting ID is 897 5775 8489. And the passcode 497712. And your worship, if anyone has any comments that they wish to make, they may still submit any written submissions up until the time that council is considering the bylaw. So if we're not able to connect this evening, we'd be happy to receive something in writing from Gary and Fran.
Yes, that is still another possibility. So let's give them a second to see if they can call in, and then we'll, I see no other hands or other hands from council. We'll wait for one call here. Councillor Clark, do you have more in the interim while we're trying to get people online? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question about the Wellington Road entrance. And whether or not there's going to be any change in the grade or a widening of that entrance. Right now, it's on a bit of a curve. It's a steep bank, and I'm just wondering what the plans are for that entrance.
Who wants that one?
Your worship, I can take a crack at that. Yeah, it's our understanding that there's going to be some significant regrading of that hillside that goes from the upper tableland down to Wellington Road. And this is, the regrading will affect the ultimate shape of the high density block on the land rise development. So yeah, there will be some significant regrading along that slope.
And you're being tag teamed?
Thank you, Jim, and through you, your worship, to Councillor Clark. So further to Jim's comments, so Wellington Road itself will remain, you know, at the existing grade that it is today. There will be a left turn lane added for northbound traffic turning left west into the subdivision. As a point of reference, the existing driveway that's been cut into the embankment to access the upper tablelands the ultimate street A will be located just slightly south of where that driveway is right now. So that is an improvement to the sight lines that are acknowledged to be a challenge right now. So we will make sure that the ultimate design of that intersection meets all city standards and tax standards for sight lines and stopping distances and all of that.
Okay, follow up.
And just as a follow-up, it's the $1 million question, because there was a number of trees and shrubs and things that were cleaned up along that road. And is that part of the answer, is that there's going to be regrading, and is that the reason why that hillside was cleaned off?
Through your worship, yes, that hillside, the entire area that was cleared has always been within residential designation, not a natural heritage or a woodlot area. So it was more just call them like yard trees around the existing resident or the former residence that was on the site, and then some lower value vegetative growth that had grown along that embankment that at one time was clear when the road was cut many years ago when it was built. As Jim mentioned, the street, when Street A will be regraded, there will be some regrading, and I guess we're getting outside of the public meeting that's our subject right now, but there will be some regrading on the high density block just south of the site to have it match in better with Wellington and the future Street A, rather than sitting up so elevated as it does.
All right, I'm gonna give Gary and Fran another try. Were you able to call in? And if so, give us a talk.
Your worship, just as a reminder, they need to dial *9 as well.
Okay, so if you're now on your phone, *9. The hand is up, so that would be raise hand function on a phone. But we still don't hear you. I see another hand up on a phone number of 519-631-6515. If that is you, whose number I've just given, please unmute yourself or give us a conversation. You seem-
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
I hear you. Name and address, please.
Yeah, it's Fran and Gary, 10263 Lyndhurst Park Drive.
Great.
Thanks for your patience trying to get through here. I better ask all my questions here at once.
Give us the bunch. Go ahead.
Just to follow up to Councillor Wookie's comments, if there is either drainage or erosion or dumping in the ravine, I'm assuming action will be taken only when there's a complaint. And who do I complain to? The city or to the conservation authority who has the ravine?
Well, I would suggest you would start with customer service at the City of St. Thomas, and we'll share it with the Conservation Authority if that's a need. Our customer service is both on email at stthomas.ca or calling the city number and hitting 0. So 519-631-1680. And it's been a hugely improved system in the last couple of years of getting everything routed through one place and us taking the onus of sharing it with, say, Kettle Creek in this case, if it's needed to be done.
Thank you. Next, the increased traffic on Wellington Road. I see there's a road going to go out on Wellington Road. Is there going to be a stoplight or any kind of method of allowing traffic out?
Anybody know the road design on Road A and Wellington Road?
Through you, your worship, during the the traffic study was completed by Paradigm Transportation Solutions, and they were retained comprehensively by LaCram and Landrise. So as I mentioned earlier, there is a 30-meter long left turn lane for northbound traffic on Wellington. During the initial stages of construction, it's just recommended to be a stop controlled intersection on Street A. Wellington Road traffic would remain as through. And then basically in future build out conditions, it would be reevaluated whether a signal's needed. However, based on their future projections at this time, that's not recommended.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next, the trees were removed on the whole side of Wellington Road. I'm sure there was a purpose for it. Now, according to I think the city bylaws, do those trees have to be replaced within the municipality?
I mean, I can say from my chair, yes, they do. That's our bylaw. If you remove trees, even trees we've removed in our own industrial site have to be replaced by us. So, yes. But I'll take another expert if there's another one that wants to share. Mr. Bray is coming to the speaker.
Thank you, Mayor Preston. Yeah, the trees that were removed, they were assessed and a tree replacement protocol report has been done.
Now they have the time of the development to do it.
Correct.
This isn't done by tomorrow, but it's
Correct.
over time, those trees must be must meet the assessment that you've given them.
That's correct. We know the compensation that's required.
Super.
Okay, last question, and thank you very much. The high rises that are going to be built, is there a restriction on the number of levels?
Anybody?
Your worship, I can respond to that.
Please.
The blocks are being placed into an R5 zone. It would allow, I believe it's up to about 45 meters in height, which give you about a 14-story building roughly. We don't know that anybody's going to, there's no specific development plans for the blocks. They're high density blocks, not necessarily high rise. So you could see a combination of built form in these blocks, and we'll know more once either the blocks get sold to a builder or the developers come up with a development scenario for them. But they're simply being based into an R5 zone, which is our high density zone.
But is there any bylaw by the city that says it can only be a certain height in a residential area?
Well, as I mentioned, in the R5 zone, there is a maximum height. And it would allow approximately about 14 stories, roughly.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and thanks for all your efforts to get on tonight.
Okay.
And I have one more question. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, it's Fran you're speaking with.
Okay, hi, Fran.
Concerned. Oh, hi. I'm very concerned about the number of traffic, cars, et cetera, coming up Wellington and pedestrians trying to cross between Lyndhurst and Crescent. Will there be a controlled pedestrian crosswalk put in to help with families to cross safely?
As was shared, the traffic study at this moment requires a stop intersection there, but it will be us working with Central Elgin because there's two different municipalities crossing Wellington there, but those conversations, and Southwold too, right? So yeah, those conversations will need to, I'll get Mayor Sloan on the phone and let's see what we have to do. But we'll need to start some building first, and as soon as there's families there, we'll really be watching what the traffic does.
Thank you.
You're very
My
welcome.
other question is about noise control and
Yes.
both the beginning and end of the workday for people in this area.
Okay. I believe we have current bylaws on construction start not before 7 a.m. and I'm sure I don't know what the end time is.
Okay, thank you so much for hearing me out.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Do I have anyone else who wants to ask a question? I still have two hands up. They're going down now. Okay. I'm going to suggest that everybody's been given a fair opportunity to express their views, and if there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the action of council regarding the passing of a bylaw for the proposed amendments should email customer service at customerservice@stthomas.ca and indicate which public meeting. This one was public meeting number 1, Sandymount subdivision. Would you want to be notified on, and provide your name and address. And for those that don't have access to a computer, wish to be notified, can call customer service at 519-631-1680 and extension 0 and provide that same information, your name, address, and what public meeting. This public meeting is now concluded. I will move quickly to the second public meeting, and this is the second public meeting as required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment to permit a proposed residential development on the lands known as Sandymount Subdivision 9783 Wellington Road. The mayor, that's me, will introduce the manager of planning who will provide background information. Jim, do you have more information or did we lump it all together?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, we do have a little bit more information. There is another official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment here for dealing with the land rise application.
Right.
They're very, very similar, and this won't take too long to go through. So on the screen right now, you see the draft plan for land rise, and they will include the Street A up to where it will terminate at the La Creme subdivision. And there's also a couple of other local streets that are being put in place. Going on with the official plan amendment part of their application, the first part is the introductory statement stating that all of this part of the document entitled Part B constitutes amendment number 112 to the official plan of the City of St. Thomas. Under the details of the amendment, item 1 states that Schedule A land use plan, the official plan of the City of St. Thomas, as amended by designating the lands numbered 112 on the location plan from natural heritage to residential. And again, this is just to address the changes at the boundary between the residential and natural heritage that come about as a result of the studies that were done in support of the application. So again, on the inset to Schedule A here, you can see these areas in the heavy solid line, and that is the areas where these changes are being proposed. Implementation and interpretation of the amendment shall be in accordance with the respective policies of the City of St. Thomas official plan. Going on with the zoning bylaw amendment. Now, this first paragraph is important because essentially what this does, it's going to place certain areas and blocks within zones that were established through the La Creme application. In doing so, we ensure that we have consistent zoning right across the development area. And it's important because there are some blocks on both La Creme and Land Rise that when joined together will form lots. So we want to make sure the zoning is consistent. So this first paragraph states that zoning map 46 as amended is further amended by zoning the land shown outlined in heavy solid lines in Schedule A as R3A-51, by zoning the land shown hatched on Schedule A as R3A-53, by zoning the lands shown cross-hatched as R3A-55, by zoning the land shown shaded as R5-49, and by zoning the land shown in heavy solid line and shaded as OS-17. This schedule shall be added to and form part of the bylaw and be known as special zoning map 50 or 46-3. So we have, again, this is a copy of that special zoning map. There's all this area in the white with a heavy solid line around it. It's going into the R3A-51, consistent with the balance of the area in the La Creme subdivision. The R3A-53 is going to deal with some townhouse blocks. The R3A-55 is dealing with single detached dwellings with a special setback on them. The R549 is the high density block for land rise, and the OS-17 is part of the parkland and stormwater block. So going on with the details of the zoning amendment, Part 2 states that bylaw 50-88 is further amended by adding to 7A.5 a new paragraph 7A.5.55. The area affected is the R3A-55 as was shown in the special map part. The applicable provisions are the provisions of the R3A zone, the standard provisions. But we have a special setback requirement. Again, this is the lots that border up against the slope, saying that notwithstanding any of the provision of the bylaw, no building or structure other than a fence shall be erected within 6 meters of the rear lot line. And again, in anticipation of the eventual consolidation of the bylaw, there's a Schedule B to this amendment, being zoning map 46, to include all the changes that have been made to date, including this amendment. And this again is zoning map 46. Which, as we can see now, is completed by including the all the provisions for this particular amendment, as well as land rise, or as well as La Creme. And you can see that we have a consistent right through the entire subdivision area, consistent zoning applying throughout. And that is the draft, Your Worship, if there's any questions.
Right, I'll ask our clerk, other than what we've already talked about when we talked about the La Creme side, is there any other written submissions that we've received?
Your worship, just the same letter from the Dodds, no other submissions.
Super. Okay, and I'll ask council if you have any questions on the Wellington Road official plan changes. Seeing done, and then I'll open it to the public. And I see one hand up. Shamik, if you can unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry about that. I think that was a previous, I didn't lower my hand.
Okay, no worries. We're happy to have you here listening today either way. Thank you. Any other questions from any of the public? Just simply use your raised hand icon or if you're on a phone, *9. I'll ask again, is there any other questions from council or from any member of the public? Gary and Fran back. Can you give us a shot? Give it a try. No, we still don't hear you on this side. All right, how about the phone number one, the 519-631-6515? Unmute, okay.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, just one question on the diagram. The dark line at the back of the subject lands, is that the creek or is that the edge of the property?
I'm gonna let Mr. McComb change his.
Now, sorry, are you talking about on this particular diagram here?
No, the one you were just talking about, the other construction.
So this one here?
Well, on the papers that were sent to us, there's a heavy black line at the end of the subject line, and I don't know if that's the property boundary or the creek.
If it was on the notice, chances are then what you were seeing on the heavy solid line was the actual limits of the subject land.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Councillor Peters?
Thanks, your worship. It was nice to hear you, Mr. Rand, use the word creek instead of creek.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Gary.
I've retrained myself to call it a crick every time now. It's
Well, you know, Councillor Peters, how we go back in history.
yes,
Thank you very much, guys.
you're very welcome. Any other comments from council or of the public? I see no more hands raised, so I will say that everybody's been given a fair opportunity to express their views. And if there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw for the proposed amendment should email customer service at customerservice@stthomas.ca, indicating that which public meeting. This one is the Sandymount Subdivision Wellington Road meeting, and which meeting they will want to be notified on and provide their name and address. If you don't have access to a computer and wish to be notified, call customer service at 519-631-1680, hit extension 0, and provide the same information. This meeting is now concluded. And we thank you all for your attendance and participation this evening.